Now, Russia has launched a major aerial assault on Ukraine just days after the United States shut off military aid and also paused intelligence sharing. President Zelensky says that Ukraine and the United Kingdom talks are about having a lasting peace, and he hopes for some constructive dialogue with the United States in Saudi next week. And our next report tells you as to how Russia is intensifying the scale of its attacks, as Donald Trump claims he's actually pushing for a peace deal. Take a look.
Russia has unleashed a massive bombing campaign across Ukraine in the wave of attacks that targeted energy facilities struck residential complexes. Russia is pushing Ukraine to breaking point. Ukraine claims multiple Russian strikes have killed at least 20 people and injured dozens, while a Russian assault hit the center of Dobropilya in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. A drone attack struck Kharkiv region. On the front lines, Russian forces have almost surrounded thousands of Ukrainian troops who entered Russia's Kursk region last August. Amid a pause in US military and intelligence assistance, Ukraine has been hoping to use its presence in Kursk as leverage over Moscow in its peace talks. That prospect seems to be slipping away now. Ukraine's outnumbered and outgunned troops feel US President Donald Trump is towing the Russian line, putting lives of thousands of soldiers at risk.
If Russia continues here, it is a signal to all dictators in the world. All these people are watching. China's watching, North Korea's watching, Iran, all these things. These places are watching to see how we will react. Our ability as people to forget, if it doesn't directly affect us, works in favor of dictators because they are able to do things like mass murder, rape, mass graves, genocide, kidnapping, all of these things.
The relentless aerial assaults come days after Trump threatened new sanctions and tariffs on Russia, even as he backed Moscow on sealing a peace deal.
I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards. They don't have the cards. As you know, we're meeting in Saudi Arabia on sometime next week, early. And we're talking, I find that in terms of getting a final settlement, it may be easier dealing with Russia, which is surprising because they have all the cards.
President Zelensky is, however, refusing to budge. He calls for more sanctions against Russian bombardment, with tensions escalating between the US and its NATO allies. Disagreements over Europe's stance on the Ukraine war. Reports suggest Trump is considering withdrawing American troops from Germany and redeploy its forces in Hungary. With senior US and Ukrainian officials meeting in Riyadh next week to discuss the first steps of Ukraine peace deal after the Oval Office blow-up between Zelensky and Trump. Can Kyiv secure the security guarantees that it seeks on ending this war?
I earlier spoke with James Jackson, who's a defense journalist and also a political analyst. Listen to what he had to say.
I think, you know, this is almost a chess game, and rather than just being between Ukraine and Russia, there are now three players, at least, with the US seeming to take a increasingly hostile tone against Ukraine. You heard President Donald Trump there saying that he finds the Ukrainians harder to deal with. Now, the US is responsible for about half of the military aid, or over half of the military aid for Ukraine, Europe covering up most of the rest. So this is all a chess game. And what matters is also in large part the perception of Mr. Trump. So, you know, many analysts and European leaders as well who saw the meeting in the White House said, well, you know, he stood up to Zelensky stood up to Vance and Trump, who were trying to bully him. But he clearly had to climb down and was called on to do so by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, because they realized strategically it's not about who's right, it's about who's making the decision.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.